And in studio with us again, he's back with a property perspective, and a very good afternoon to you. And how are you, Harry? Lucky to have you with us again.
All right, thanks, Al. Yeah, all good, ready to go.
Lekker. And today we're going to be chatting about foreign nationals and property transactions in South Africa. This ought to be a very interesting one, and this especially on the back of our family meeting we had.
Our family meeting on Sunday.
Yeah. So let's start with the basics then. Are foreign, and I'm going to jump right into it. Are foreign nationals allowed to rent or buy property in this country?
Oh, yes, absolutely they can. They're fully allowed to. The only, I think, requirement on property professionals, property practitioners and landlords is to make sure that they are actually in the country legally. In other words, they have a valid visa or work permit to be here.
Yeah, and I would imagine we have a lot of foreign nationals that are either doctors, teachers, and a whole lot of other professionals. But I mean, even some of those top professions that we really look for, like doctors and nurses and teachers and the sorts.
Indeed, with Joburg being the economic hub of South Africa and one of the biggest economies in Africa, if not the biggest, many of our businesses are therefore international, and often the businesses send their execs to come and stay in South Africa, and they obviously need a place to live. Other people who own businesses, and especially up into Africa, invest in Joburg and Cape Town.
Yeah.
So yes, foreign nationals play a very big part in our property sector.
Yeah. Now, when a foreign national applies to rent a property, what documentation should they typically have, or what is required from them?
So it's almost the same as if anyone else rents it. Obviously, property practitioners are bound by FICA, the Financial Intelligence Centre Act, to screen and identify, all of the clients that they deal with. So therefore, you have your passport and proof of residence, and that forms the identification of the client. Know your client part. You have your visa or your work permit or your study permit, whatever is applicable. And that means that you're lawfully in the country. Then obviously there's your proof of income and bank statements. That speaks to your affordability, so there's a verification that needs to happen there. And then, there's an employment confirmation. So normally we ask for a letter of employment, or at least make a phone call to ensure that you are actually working, you're earning a consistent income, and that you can afford the property. And then finally, we'll do reference checks from the previous landlord to make sure you're a desirable tenant. We spoke about that the other day. So just making sure that you pay your rent on time, and obviously we do the credit checks through the bureaus to check your credit record. Provided you've been staying here, even as a foreign national, you will then have a credit record with the credit bureaus.
Now, if I just came from Canada, for argument's sake, and I've just landed and I'm looking for a property to rent, I'm starting to work with one of the companies that we might own in Canada that is operating here. What documentation will I need as far as credit checks and that type of stuff? Are you going to phone my last landlord?
So that is where it does become a lot more interesting. And, in general, a foreign national represents a bit more risk to a landlord simply because they can hop on a plane and be out of here.
Yeah.
So with your example of a Canadian arriving, they've just arrived here. They're working for a bigger company. Obviously, we're not going to be able to pull any credit records, South African credit records for them anyway.
Yes.
Their bank statement's going to be in Canadian dollars and all of that. So that does make it a bit more difficult. Not impossible, though, because somebody would have had to invite them to come and work here and get a work permit, i.e. their partner company in South Africa. So we would then rely on those documents. And usually what happens in a case like that, if it's a senior exec or a partner in the business, the company would actually normally pay that rent or make an arrangement with them. They normally get a living allowance and they can make an arrangement then with them, and the company will almost guarantee that rent, which will then be obviously quite beneficial to the landlord again. So you can just look at this from a slightly different angle in those cases.
Would the company be able to actually sign the lease?
That often happens in corporate rentals is the company signs the lease, and the exec, whoever they may be, is simply the occupant. And then, if that occupant needs to leave and go home in a hurry because of an emergency, the company then can obviously place someone else. There's just some little bit of admin, but certainly that can happen, yes.
Now, you mentioned documentation and how it has to remain valid for the duration of the lease. Is this a common problem that you guys pick up, especially with passports and visas and work permits expiring during the lease period?
Yeah, this is actually pretty common, Al. It happens all the time, simply because the duration of, especially a visa and a work permit, isn't a fixed duration always. It's not, example, 5 years. It could be 6 months, it could be 1 year, it could be 2 years or 5 years. And it just depends on the application at the time. And I mean, if we say that, let's say that visa or work permit is for 1 year, and it happened 3 months ago. So by the time you're coming to sign this lease, you're already 3 months into that period, and now you only have 9 months left. That means a normal 12-month lease could become problematic. Not necessarily always, but there are potentially some difficulties because landlord doesn't want to be complicit in harboring an illegal immigrant, and if your visa and your work permit has expired and you're still in the country, you're here illegally. So that's the risk on the landlord in those cases. And normally what we do then is simply make the lease for the duration of that existing work permit, or sometimes it's a passport that's going to expire. You make it for the duration of that, and then once the tenant has got his new documents in place, his new visa, his renewed passport, he simply presents that, and then the lease can be extended. You can do a renewal agreement to the original lease and have that lease extended for the next period for whenever that work permit or visa or passport's going to expire.
Well, let me throw you into the deep end. What happens when you come across asylum seekers or refugees? How should landlords and agents approach asylum seekers or refugees for that matter? So, what kind of documentation are you looking for then?
So this does become quite a lot more difficult now, and so once you get to asylum seekers or refugees, it's less common, but still happens on a fairly regular basis. So, firstly, someone is applying for refugee status, and once they get approved, they get a refugee permit, and then they're in the country legally. And usually, in the interim period before they get that, they apply to be an asylum seeker. Which again, they get a permit, and those permits, again, they're only valid, the asylum seekers, for a lot shorter, normally 6 months at a time. So again, signing a long-term lease is problematic, but it's less common because usually these are not the guys who are earning 50, 80K a month and can afford a normal structured lease agreement. They normally have family or friends, and they would make an arrangement with them first off. But the same would apply, as long as, and actually I forgot to mention, even for a normal visa or work permit, often as long as we receive the proof that they've applied to renew that document, whatever it might be now, your asylum seeker permit, your refugee permit, whatever, as long as you've applied for it, most agencies will be quite happy to then extend that lease. Because I think we are fully aware we're dealing with home affairs here, and it's not always a pretty sight the way that our asylum seekers and foreigners are treated in those queues, either by other people waiting in the queue, or sometimes as they get to the front of the queue, they've spent 3 hours. Oh, sorry, we closed for lunch, or we're closing early this afternoon. The system is down. So those guys spend days and days and days in queues, and it is sometimes very difficult. But the same principle would apply.
Now, what happens if I have refugee status? I've got my permit. It says I am a refugee here in South Africa.
So that refugee permit means you're legally allowed to be here. So, and if we go back to the family meeting, a lot of the focus was on illegal immigrants.
Yeah.
and that means you are not illegal. You're legally allowed to be in the country, and that a permit then is going to allow you, provided that you have the affordability and the means to pay your rent, to sign your rent. Again, we just need to check when that expires. Your refugee status is normally going to be a year or 2 years, sometimes longer. As long as you're signing your lease within the period, or it's not going to expire before that, you're good to go.
Now, let's say, for argument's sake, I have a permit, and my work permit has got 9 months left before it expires. What do you do in that regard as a landlord? Do I just automatically not qualify for a lease, or do you kind of make the lease fit?
Well, there's two things we can do. Yeah, there's two things we can do. Is we can make the lease fit the permit period. So instead of signing a 12-month lease, you're now signing a 9-month lease.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing to do is you can sign the 12-month lease. This is a little bit more tricky, and it places a lot of onus on the tenant or the applicant. You make it their responsibility to bring you that renewal document, or at least the application that has been submitted, within 3 months before the expiry, because we know these things are going to take time. And then should they not bring it, then the lease will be terminated, and they would potentially be liable for the rest of the rent anyway. So you put quite a heavy burden on them, but the ball's then in their court to make sure that they get that document renewed.
So what you're saying is, I'm renting, I've got 9 months left on my permit. You say, listen, month 6, we're going to come.
You must come to us and bring us your renewal document.
Oh, there we go.
Then we continue in the deal. If you don't come to us,
then tomorrow you're out.
Well, it wouldn't be tomorrow. It would be at the end.
Yeah, well, I'm talking
2 months later when the permit actually expires.
Oh, okay. So you're not going to chuck them out immediately, out?
No, not necessarily, because they legally allowed to be until the day that permit expires.
All right, with you. So just before we wrap up, then, how can landlords reduce and manage risks when it comes to foreign nationals renting property from them?
That's a very good question, Al, because as I said when we start, simply because they can jump on a plane and go back to their home country, their home tomorrow, that does potentially leave a bit more risk on the table for the landlord. So the landlord must do his checks, must do the vetting and the screening of the tenants, and he must know to make sure to get those legal documents in place. When a landlord sometimes does this on his own and doesn't want to pay the agent's commission is potentially when they start picking up problems, because guys who are going to be dodgy also know to target landlords who are not going through an agency. Agencies are bound by FICA, as we said, and then we're doing most of these checks anyway for FICA before we even get to the rest of the requirements. So number one, if you are doing it yourself, go for it, but just be very sure to do a full screening, do all the checks, check the documents, and ask the right questions. And then another way of reducing some of that risk would be if there is an element of risk involved, is to increase the deposit. There's nothing in law says that the deposit can't be 2 months worth of rent or even 3 months worth of rent. So provided the parties agree and they're happy to sign that lease, it must be discussed up front, of course. You can increase the deposit amount, and the deposit simply covers risk.
All right. So let's do a couple of true and false questions, shall we? I want to know from you, foreign nationals, can they own property in South Africa?
Yes, absolutely they can. True.
All right. A landlord should ignore an expiring visa if the tenant is a good payer or has a good payment history.
False.
Okay. So proof of renewal applications, passports or visas may be important where new documents have not yet been issued. Is that true or false?
That's true, correct.
And good documentation protects both the landlord and the tenant.
Absolutely. So, I mean, that's what this is all about, and I think why we did place quite a bit of emphasis on the documentation side, doing the proper screenings and making sure you get the stuff in place.
All right. So, just a little bit, let's quickly read Reader's Digest this. Give us the key takeaway for today's message.
The key takeaway is that foreign nationals do play an extremely important part in our property market. But they could represent, and I say could, not always, a bit more risk on the part of the landlord. So landlords and agents really need to be extra vigilant, make sure they're getting all the documents, all the permits, and all the additional required information in place, make sure it's properly verified, and they take the necessary steps to make sure the tenants are properly screened.
Lovely. And now for my favorite time of the week. Time to check out your property of the week. And this afternoon we're speaking to Les Pretorius.
The Drive Train. No roadblocks, no detours, just great vibes and good time.
So, Les, a very good afternoon to you. Welcome to the Drive Train. Nice to have you once again.
Good afternoon, Al. Nice to be here.
Lovely. You're going to share your property of the week with us. Tell us where we're looking at and what we can expect.
Yes, thank you. Wow. Al, this could literally be my dream home. It's located in the lovely neighborhood of Northwold. It's a quaint and quirky flat with a double volume, lounge, dining room, and the areas have these exposed beams, which make it so interesting, and it easily accommodates a 8 to 10 seater dining room table. There's a spiral staircase next to this little study nook, which is so convenient, that goes up to the loft room. And here you can have a pajama lounge, another study, or a fourth bedroom. The unit itself, the property itself, has 2 bedrooms downstairs with a bathroom, and then the main ensuite is so nicely privately located on the first floor with a renovated bathroom, double vanities, really lovely. Kitchen has everything you need, gas stove, place for water appliances, lots of cabinetry. And then if you wander outside in true South African style, the entertainment area has a cozy thatched gazebo and a forest-like garden which overlooks the pool and the deck. That's not all. This property has a lovely, lovely one-bedroom flatlet, so amazing for extended family, guests, or income earning potential, and that because it's got private access.
Listen, it does sound like a bit of a country home vibe, to be totally honest. Sounds absolutely amazing.
It really is. It's like forestry, as I said, around it. It's so beautifully green. So it's a lovely property.
So Les, tell us exactly where this property is and what are we looking at as far as costs are concerned?
Okay, so you're looking in Northwold, which is North Riding, Randburg area, and its value is 2250 2,250,000 rand.
That is not bad for all of that you just
not
mentioned,
bad
let me
all.
tell you. Now, Les, if people want to check out this property, I would take it. It is available and you can check it out on Etchells Young's website. Am I right?
Yes. Yes, you can contact me on 083 268 6887. That's Les, or on email at les@etchellsandyoung.co.za.
Lovely. And of course, if they miss that, Les, they can just go and check out the website, which is Etchells and Young. It's AND, not the and sign, and young.co.za. And they'll find that property there, and they'll find your contact details there too, Les.
Yes, they will.
Lovely. Thank you very much for bringing us our property of the week.
Oh, thank you. It was such a pleasure.
Lovely.
Thank you.
Chat soon. Cheers now.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
And on that note, it's time for us to get out of here. Thank you for joining us, as usual, Harry.
Awesome.
I nearly went home. Jeez.
Well, I tell
You made me feel at home with the property of the week, let me tell you.
That looks absolutely stunning, I must say. But not as stunning as where you guys are going to be next week, and we're going to be missing the show then for our Ivory Tree trip, I believe.
Yes, we're going to be telling you about that property. Monday and
So maybe you need a property perspective to appear there magically.
You see, Lesedi, I think
Trying to get
Lots
to
of hangers
Ivory
on.
Tree,
Lots
huh?
of hangers on.
I think we've just got our sponsorship.
Oh,
Our trip is sponsored by Etchells Young
I thought it was already sponsored.
between Johannesburg and Ivory Tree. From there,
I
Ivory
see,
Tree takes over.
I
you see.
see, I see.
See? Anyway, thanks for joining us, Harry.
Thank you very much.
And,
Always a pleasure.
We'll chat again soon.
Indeed.
All right, here's Madness.